listen. Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Get on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's no human being I'd rather be talking to right now than JP Ricciardi, podcaster. Podcaster. Congratulations on, I feel like much like you helped me getting in the book writing business, I helped you basically pave the way for your podcasting excellence. So
you introduced me to the dark side.
You did. But you're good at it. You're good at it. So I appreciate it.
It's a lot of fun. It's like, when you're talking baseball with guys you like, how can it not be fun? It's actually what I miss the most about not being in the ballparks is, talking to all the writers that you used to run into, talking to the baseball people, talking to the scouts. And I know that doesn't happen too much where scouts are at games anymore, but man, it's just, I feel like we've lost that part of baseball. And this is a nice way to kind of connect with it.
But I feel like JP, even so you did your first podcast here on this one. And it's funny because sometimes people don't really get it, how awesome this medium can be because of exactly that. When you did it, it's like we're just having a conversation, right? It's not segmented. And I remember JP, Mookie Betts obviously has his podcast now. And he talked about all he knew was sitting in front of his locker, answering questions, just trying to get it over with. Whatever it is. And all of a sudden, now we had to start listening. Now we had to start talking, and it was okay, So, yeah.
Well, I think when you're, in my case, as a general manager, any kind of front office executive, you got to be a little guarded about what you can say. I got in trouble a few times because I let my guard down and said what I was really thinking, which it's unfortunate. You really can't do that. But I think from a player standpoint, they're so guarded as to what they can and can't say and what they really want to say. It is tough for them. And it's nice when they get on the other side of the microphone because they probably sit there and say, man, I could have been a better interview if I let my guard down a little bit.
I'm telling you, again, come back to Mookie. Mookie said, it's like, I've become a better listener, a better person, a better communicator because they don't have to, to your point, they've never had to. And you're right. You as a GM, and I think it's worse than ever, honestly. It's just these guys are so guarded. These guys are so, you're agonizing over every third sentence a lot. So,
and it shouldn't be like that. But what's happened is, you got every possible person now, from the high school kid living at home, trying to be the next GM or trying to get his own podcast. And God bless him. To the guys in their 70s that used to sit on the street corner and argue about Mantle Mays and all those guys. Everybody has a voice now, and everybody has a way to get it across. And I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. It's just it's out there, and it's reality.
It's different, It's different. When you were for the majority of your time as GM of the Blue Jays, I think. The end of your tenure was sort of just the beginning of social media. I don't know if you were the social media thing for you.
It was more when I was with the Mets, the 8 years I spent with them. Because I remember I was sitting in the dugout one time and this guy started talking to me and I said, "Who you with?" And he said, I'm
Twitter.
I'm with Twitter. And I was like, "What?" He goes, I said, "They give you guys passes now?" So it was, that was eye-opening to me because I only knew the writers to be able to get passes. And now, they had opened it up to now I got to believe bloggers can get passes too.
Oh, now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you think about it, everybody's got something to say. And usually, unfortunately, most of it's wrong. And some of it is just cruel. I can't believe the depths that people sink to insult people, but it is what it is.
What was it like going back when you were GM? And we're going to get into the getting ready for the winter meetings in a second. What was it like when you see, obviously, then everyone's trying to get the scoop, get the news. Now it's worse than ever, to your point. Anyone can put out anything, and they say, hey, give me credit if I'm right, but don't blame me if I'm wrong, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
I think
But
I
what
was
would,
at the end of that. I
oh,
was
yeah.
I was at the very end of where guys actually had to check their sources
Mm.
because now it's there's nothing like it. You just throw it up against the wall. If it sticks, it sticks. And I think that's what I think that's what in your business, the guys that aren't uh, they're not affiliated with the New York Post or the Boston Globe or things like that, but they have enough access that they can throw stuff, and they've forced those really good writers to have to really take a leap of faith sometimes.
I've always found this interesting, JP, about when I try to tell this. I've told this to executives. I say, listen, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
But I feel like even like if we had a good relationship and you were a GM and I was wrong about something, most of the time the executives don't tell even like the writers they get along with that they're wrong. They'll the reasoning I think they'll say is that, oh, there's just too much, it is what it is, it doesn't matter, whatever. But still, I mean, once in a while they will. I mean, how did you handle that? Like, how did
I'll give you a perfect example. One time we were at the GM meetings, and there's one writer from Toronto, one writer, and we're getting ready to sign Frank Thomas to a 2-year deal. We come to terms with Thomas. The writer can't be found. He's not even around. So I told my assistant at the time, I said, call so and so,
Yeah.
tell him we're going to sign Frank Thomas. I said, he's the only writer here. He obviously can't, he's going to get in so much trouble if he doesn't have this scoop. I said, so tell him to come back to the hotel and we'll tell him what we did. So, trying to be a nice guy and trying to realize the guy's job was not in jeopardy, but that's why they sent him to the winter meetings. And if this story broke and he didn't have it, but
that is definitely an aberration. I mean,
I just felt bad for the guy. But let me tell you, they don't reciprocate that.
No, but how about the times where they're wrong? I mean, like, where there's more than one writer, or
what I found,
and maybe go ahead.
Yeah, but this is what I found. I found the really good guys you could have these conversations with. You could say to them, look, I read your article, or this is what you said. This is why we can't do this, or this is what's happening. I can't tell you that in the public, because if you write that, then I'm going to get in trouble with, that's my dog, Bruno.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in trouble with the people I have to answer to. But I'm trying to, in trying to create a really good dialogue and a friendship here, I'm trying to explain to you why I can't do this. Hopefully you won't run with this and write it. And I think in certain, like Toronto, it didn't work because some of the writers in Toronto just didn't get it. They just had an agenda that they were going to not like someone. They would say, we're not going to like this guy. We're not going to take the time to get to know him. But I found with the other guys that you spent time with, it was great.
Well, and so why doesn't and correct me if you think differently, but why don't executives do that more? Like, why don't executives, like, they're JP, like, I just say, listen, I am trying to be right, but I'm not. Maybe I'm misguided. Maybe I remember. Here's an example. I think it was last year, maybe around I don't know when it was, but it was. I said an agent told me a team was interested in a player amongst some other teams. So I said this guy's drawing interest from these teams. The GM the GM that you know very well, who he texts me, he's like, that's not true. We haven't contact at all. And I said, I appreciate that, but that happens maybe I'm right all the time. I don't know, but it's, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't happen all the time.
I think, and I'm going to sound like that old guy, but I just think it's a whole different generation of people running teams today. And I've never seen the game so sterile as it is today. The lack of wanting to form relationships, the lack of being able to talk, the lack of just creating a relationship and talking baseball with, I was so fortunate. Gammons, Cafardo, yourself, McAdam, Tony Maserati, Joel Sherman, Heyman, Verducci, Jason Stark, Kirkchin. I knew all those guys and still do. And it was always baseball conversations with those guys. There was no agenda. And I just think today, the front offices have not taken the time to cultivate those relationships and to find out that you can get a lot out of talking to other people, especially some of the writers. They can give you good information. And I just think we just live in a day and age where it's very sterile, and it's us and it's them.
Well, that's okay. That leads me into sort of the offseason talk about what you're saying. How much back and forth you are doing your best to identify the right guys to trade for, to sign, or whatever. And to your point, people don't understand a big part of that. I get calls from usually like scouts or GMs. What's this guy like? That's part of it, right? I mean, that has to be part of it.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
you're trying to, the best thing about baseball, like, and I can only speak for myself, 43 years in the game. I was a minor league player. I was a minor league coach, and I rose up through the ranks. But all the way through those ranks, I made friendships and I made connections. And I could pick up the phone and talk to so many different people, whether it was a trainer, whether it was a clubhouse guy, whether it was, traveling secretary, whether it was an ex-team. So building those relationships allows you to be able to find out more information about guys that you want to bring in. And sometimes you take the risk. Sometimes we traded for Shea Hillenbrand. And everything I got about Shea Hillenbrand was not good. Not good makeup, this, and that. Now, I could tell you, Shea Hillenbrand came to us in his first year. He was great. He made the All-Star team. He played hard. He didn't go outside the lines. He was great. So, that was a case where we took a chance on a guy and it ended up being okay. The second year was miserable. But I mean, his true personality came out at that point. And I don't think Shea's a bad guy. He just, he was dealing with some things. But we knew going in that this was a guy that had some problems in the past. So at least we knew. If I make that decision, I made that decision knowing it. So I think having those relationships goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, I remember conversations that we've had. I remember, and some of the popping in my, like Curtis Granderson. I remember you saying like, this guy, like what kind of guy he is, and how that maybe he's on the other side of his prime years, but still like the fit that he's going to have with the Mets.
You have to take personalities. Like, I know you have Papelbon on your show a lot, right?
Yeah.
And Papelbon's the kind of guy, when you're sitting in the other dugout, you want to rip his head off. But when he's on your team, he's the greatest teammate you can have. So when you look at a guy like Papelbon and that's how he's wired, that I'm either bringing this guy in because I'm attracted to that and what he brings to us, or you say, I don't want that type of guy and I back away. Now, personally, I hated Papelbon because he was so good against us.
Yeah.
But he's the kind of guy that if I had a chance, he'd be the first guy I'd want pitching out of my bullpen. And he was made for Boston because he had that mentality that he could pitch in Boston. I'd take 1 million Papelbons if I could find him on my team. But what his personality's like. So you have to realize or decide, do I bring him in or do I not bring him in? And, those are the things that you have to weigh as a general manager.
Yeah, and you have to ask around. I mean, I'll give you another example. The guy who owns the LLC for this podcast, Joe Kelly, Joe, he's not getting signed by the Yankees right now because he's ripped the Yankees 50 times since the World Series. But you tell me a time where Joe has ever said a bad word about any of his teammates, including, by the way, the most dysfunctional White Sox team in the history of baseball, which he was on. And so, yeah, I mean, is he good for your team? Is he good for your clubhouse? But, when you're talking about relationships, JP, like it is so true. And again, I don't want to be like old man yelling at clouds, but it's true. It's true. It's so true.
The world, though, I don't understand. It doesn't matter. Like, if you have a problem with your car, don't you go to a mechanic that you like, that you've had a relationship with? If someone said, hey, I need to put a new roof on my house, who do they recommend that and you could trust? I don't think life is any different than baseball. I just think we've become so callous in our game by the people that are now, not all of them, but a lot of people that are running organizations now, they don't cultivate relationships. It's like, I'm going to be here. I'm in my ivory tower. I'm not going to talk to my scouts. I'm not going to talk to my player development people. I'm not going to, you know how many good scouts and player development people are out there that don't get heard? Their voice does not get heard. And I remember Sandy Alderson used to say this all the time. I don't really care what I'm paying, the JP Ricciardis of the world as my right-hand man, because they could help me make a decision that saves millions of dollars for this organization. And I think we've lost that continuity. I remember when I worked with Billy Bean. Billy was the best to work for because he listened to you. He didn't do everything you always wanted to do, but he was always willing to listen. And I just see today, I think one of the biggest mistakes general managers make today is they don't hire a really good assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
They should go hire the Jim Henrys of the world, what's his name? I always forget his name.
Well, I go back to the Bill of Joy.
Bill of Joy,
Bill of
the
Joy.
Bill of Joys of the world.
I knew you were thinking of Bill of Joy.
Yeah, there's so many guys that have already done it, have the scars that could help these guys. And I think they all miss it when they don't add someone that can really help them to get through some tough times.
Yeah, I mean, the one that jumps to mind right now is you're dating more with Chris
Texas.
Young. I mean,
Yeah.
Chris Young is. You could say, oh well, he played, he knows what it's like, and he's a smart guy. Princeton, everything else. Well, he knows what he doesn't know, and you know what? He won a World Series. So
Listen, because you were an ex-major league player, or because you were an ex-minor league player, an ex-major league coach, an ex-major league, whatever you were, running a team is totally different than all of that. I think Buster Posey's going to find that out.
yeah,
I think any of these ex-players that become in charge of teams, I think it's great that we're starting to get some more ex-players involved, but it's such a different mindset of how to run a team. You have to surround yourself with people with. I think that I like what Brian Cashman's done with
Naring.
Well, he's got Naring is excellent, but he's also got Brian Sabian, a Hall of Famer,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got Omar Minaya, who has a whole different mindset. So I think some of the teams that have brought in some veteran guys, and I think it takes those guys that aren't threatened by those guys.
That's a big part of it too. Yeah,
they have to really say, "Hey, I want Gene Cady sitting on my bench if I'm the head coach at St. John's. I want Bobby Knight with all his experience sitting aside of me," because they've kind of lost their drive to be what they once were, and they just want to contribute.
This is the first Gene Cady reference on Baseball Isn't Boring officially.
Oh, remember he went back and helped Lavin over at St. John's.
Oh, sure. Listen,
Yeah.
like Pete Carrill goes to Sacramento, assistant in the NBA.
And
So
Ralph
it-
Willard,
yeah.
Ralph Willard was a great coach at Holy Cross, and he went over and helped Patino.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said for having experience around you. And like I said, it goes back to what we're talking about, all having relationships.
Yeah. So to pivot to the winter meetings, one part of the winter meetings, and I think you can add insight better than I can. So you go up to the suite, you got a suite, right?
Yep.
It's usually like a unbelievable pit mess by the end of it, I would imagine, right? Because
It's like a frat house. It looks like Animal House.
it's just. But so you have your people up there, but you also send. Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also have people you send go down the lobby.
Yeah.
Go down the lobby.
Yeah.
It's such a weird dynamic. Go down the lobby and talk to people, see what people are saying, what's going on. And so that is a dynamic, right?
I got some great winter.
Come on, let's go. I love
some of the funniest things have happened at the winter. So one time I'm coming out of my suite. And the reason GMs don't come in the lobby is because they get hounded mostly by people who want jobs. And I'm sympathetic to those guys. But a woman comes up to me, she says, "You got 2 minutes?" I said, "Well, you know what it's like." So I said, "We're going to dinner." I said, "Just walk with me and tell me what you." She goes, "Well, I'm a psychic." I said, "Okay." She goes, I can predict your team next year, what's going to happen. I said, really? She goes, yeah. She goes, are you interested? I said, I'll tell you right now. If you could tell me where I'm going out to dinner right now, you're hired. She goes, I have no idea. I said, well, what kind of psychic are you? So that's those are the type of people you run into at the winter meetings.
But she went. The thing is that she went to the winter meeting. In case people don't understand, the winter meetings are a lot of things for a lot of people. Job seekers being one of them. And so she went to the winter meetings and said, you know what? I think I'm going to use this skill set. You know what? Baseball is dramatically underserved. It's in the psychic community.
Well, she was 0 for 1. But what people don't understand, people think the winter meetings, there are so many people looking for jobs at the winter meetings. There's every possible person that you could think of that loves baseball is at the winter meetings. I see this kid one day, short kid, kind of a stocky kid, and he's got a black suit on.
I was going to say bad suit, right?
Yeah, bad suit. Anyway, he looks like Chris Farley, in the movie. So anyway, he's all buttoned up on the first day, and he's running around. He's passing out his resume, and how's it going? How's it going, Mr. Ricciardi? I says, good. How you doing? What's your name? Blah, 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 blah. So by week 3, I see him. He's in the hotel hallway. He's sitting on the ground. His tie's down here. He looks like Pete Carell on the sidelines. He's all disheveled. His notes are all over the place. So I'm going by and go, hey, buddy, how you doing? He says, oh, not too good. I said, what's the matter? He goes, wow, this is a tough racket. I said, yeah. I said, it's not easy. He goes, would you mind looking at my resume? So I said, yeah, come on, just take a walk with me. So we're walking out. I'm looking at his resume. I go, what job are you looking for? He goes, I'm looking for any entry-level job. He goes, you guys have one in Toronto. I says, you know that job pays $15,000? He goes, yeah. He goes, I want it. So I'm looking. I go, you went to the Wharton School at Penn? He goes, yeah. I go, what are your parents going to say if you took a $15,000 job? And I felt so bad for the kid, but I should have followed up. He might be running a team right now. I got no idea.
I was going to say, probably is. But so you have that dynamic. And then so let's say like in these days leading up to what it is, whatever, we're 5 days out, 4 days out, 3 days out, whatever it is. Are you saying, okay, this is what I want to get done when I get to the winter meetings?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of what you want to get done. I think it's like, how do we address our needs? And then you start, you've had conversations with, say, Texas or Minnesota or the Cardinal. You're having these conversations, and usually it's like, okay, let's talk at the winter meetings. Let's talk at the winter. Baseball's a game of deadlines. For some reason, it's like the only thing that makes it move is deadlines.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say it used to be a game of deadlines.
Yeah. Well, still stuff happens more so at the winter meetings.
Right.
It is getting pushed further back. I get that, but it would always be, you'd set up these meetings and you'd go in and some guys were just great. I love dealing with Dombrowski. He was great. I love dealing with Sherholtz. He was great. Sabian was great. But this is usually, maybe it changed, but it's not like they're going suite to suite, right? We used to go suite to suite.
Did you?
But now it's all texting.
Yeah.
Do you want to meet? This and that. So anyway, but usually you're doing all your work pre-winter meetings and trying to. So we were always very aggressive because we didn't have a lot of money, so we had to get stuff done fast because we didn't really want to be left with just the leftovers. Mm-hmm. What we wanted to do is at the end, if there was something good, like one year we got Benji Molina, he fell in our lap, and he fell in our lap because I had a good relationship with his agent. Imagine that. We got Scott Downs because I had a good relationship with his agent. He had no opportunities, no jobs. I gave him a spring training invite. The guy ended up being a star in our bullpen and signing a big contract with the Angels. So relationships do help. But there's a buildup as to what you want to do going to the winter meetings, and then guys come back with information. Hey, so and so is thinking about doing this. So and so is thinking about doing that, and then you follow it up with a call. So it's just building the way you want to do things and have an idea. Like if you need a right-handed bat, then you got to start targeting teams with right-handed bats.
Right.
the way of a trade or if it's free agency.
But like you said, I mean, that's where the lobby thing comes in, where there's a lot of, it's not just job seekers, it's not just media. It's every team is sending people down there and saying, hey, what do you hear? What do you think? I witnessed, and I remember, I wish I could remember the player, but I witnessed two actually, I think Dickie Scott was involved in with one of them. But Dickie was talking to another guy, and this is whatever the player is gonna come to me. I think it was a big power hitting guy, but they would talk. Hey, I heard you need this. Hey, I need this. Okay, I'll go back up, and
Right.
That's
how
thing.
we got. When I was in New York, that's how we got. The kid who played for the Pirates, switch hitter, second baseman. Anyway, it was in the lobby. Roy Smith heard that the Pirates wanted to move him, and they wanted our left-hander at the time. I can't remember him either.
Yeah.
We ended up. Sandy was sick, so John Ricco and myself were the GM, and we ended up pulling off the trade. So we call Sandy and say, Sandy, hey, Pittsburgh, boom, 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 boom. He said, go ahead. And then that same year, I ran into Alan Nero's group and Scotty Pacino, and I was good friends with those guys. And they said, you got any interest in Asdrubal Cabrera? I said, I love Asdrubal Cabrera. He goes, he's getting ready to sign with the Braves. I said, hold on a second. I called Sandy. I said, Sandy, this guy can really help us. He can hit. He can play third. He can play short. He can play second. He can play first. He's a switch hitter. He could do a lot of things for us. I said, he's going to go to the Braves. But I said, I think if we do boom, 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 boom. So Sandy says, okay, pursue it. So I called Scotty. I said, what's it going to take? He says this. I called Sandy. I said, Sandy, give him a 2-year deal. Boom. And we got it done. And he was great for us. He was absolutely great for us. Sometimes, that's how it works.
And when it comes to actually getting stuff done, the winter meetings, unfortunately, in recent years, so they have a stage set up, right? They have a stage set up. And the stage has always been, there's going to be a trade, there's going to be a signing, usually, along with some other stuff, but usually it's for the trades and the signings. And JP, like in the last few years, that stage has been empty. There has been very little things. But I always remember, for some reason, we have this images of moments where that stage is used. And for me, it was the BJ Ryan, AJ Burnett off. I mean, both those were at the winter meetings, right?
Yeah.
Back-to-back press conferences, pretty much, right?
Well, that's when they gave us some money and we could do some things. And, we had to overpay to get those guys. But we got them, because we said, hey, listen, we got to take a shot. And actually, I think we were one of the first teams to give an out to a player. We gave an out. That's another funny story. We're up after we signed Burnett, we give him a 5-year deal with an out after 3. Because my whole thought process was, listen, if he's good for us for 3 years, that's great. He wasn't going to come here anyway. So we had to do something to get it. We had to be creative to get him to come to Toronto. So we go to a season ticket holder event in the winter, and there's probably 1,000 fans there. And you're sitting up there all by yourself. And, 1,000 fans. So they pass the mic around. Guy raises his hand. He's in the back. And he says, I can't believe you gave AJ Burnett a 5-year deal. How could you do that? So I sat there a minute and I said, well, because he didn't want 6. And it kind of set the mood for the night. But we had to be aggressive and do different things. So and like you said, I remember having those press conferences at the winter meetings, and those were big for us because it drove tickets for us.
Oh yeah, and you talk also about recruiting guys. We talk about it now, obviously with the Juan Soto stuff. It's like, okay, I mean that's obviously extreme.
Yeah,
but you have to put your best foot forward when you have to sell AJ Burnett. Besides the years and the money, you have to say, hey, Toronto's a nice place.
We had to bring them up. Yeah, we had to put the dog and pony on. I remember Zobrist. We tried to get him with the Mets.
Yeah.
So Sandy says, you got the best relationship with his agent and the player a little bit. He's flying into Westchester Airport. He goes, will you go up there and get him? So I go, sure. It could not have been a worse day to fly or to come into New York City. It was pouring. It was heavy fog. You couldn't see the skyline. And I'm driving them and I'm trying to tell them how great New York is and how great the city is. And I can't even say, like, oh, look at the skyline. And I'm like, oh, this is just disaster. Got to get the umbrella for his wife to come off the airport, off the plane. It's pouring. And I just told Sandy, I said,
JP,
I gotta
could you
bet.
believe we were talking about this lately because of the soda stuff, but like obviously the Blue Jays, they're the team that they showed, hey, we're willing to spend $700 million. Good for them. But they also had gone through this sort of recruiting process last year. And it's so bizarre to me that we look back and part of the recruiting process was bringing the guy to Dunedin. Like it was bringing Ohtani to Dunedin.
Well, I think they put so much money into that complex. They wanted to
Right.
show them. But man, talk about a great city, Toronto. Why wouldn't you bring him to Toronto?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's yeah, so the last thing is if you were in this situation, like with just say that I know it's every GM's dream to be in that situation with to have the money, the owners say, oh yeah, you can make a legitimate pitch to Soto. What would you do?
Well, I think first of all, you have to look at the player, right? I never saw Ted Williams play, but this guy has to be the most comparable guy, I think, as a left-handed hitter to Ted Williams because of his unbelievable command of the strike zone. And he's got power, he can hit. He's a complete offensive player. So you're gonna get an amazing offensive player. It just comes down to the reality of when you sit down and say, this guy's getting $700 million. 15 years ago, franchises were selling for that. So I'm just trying to get my head around that number and think, okay, what else can I do besides bring Soto in? And I think the four teams that are involved, if I had a handicap this, the way I would look at it is the Red Sox are trying to make a big splash. So they're going to be involved. The Mets, I think, want to make an even bigger splash because they came so close. Cohen's got a Latin American wife. They got a heavy Latin American team. And I think it's a great community for Latin America. The Latin Americans love the Mets in New York. That's a selling point. Then you got the Blue Jays, who I think are the outlier, and the only way he goes to Toronto, to me, is if they absolutely are the last dollar.
Yeah.
I don't see the draw for Toronto for him. I mean, it's not historical. It's out of the country.
Also, and the foundation of the team, you don't know. They can say, hey, we're going to sign Vlad Guerrero Jr., but they don't have him signed.
Right,
so
and they don't really have that group together. Their farm system's not good. They're not going to be good going forward. He'll make them a great team. He'll make a great player on a team. But like you said, are they going to be able to sign Bichette? Are they going to be able to sign Guerrero? Now, maybe they can. I don't know. But I think Toronto would be four. And the Yankees, maybe surprisingly, I think the Yankees have a number. And I don't think they're going to go past that number. Because at some point, you've got Stanton, Judge, and Soto. One of them is going to be a DH. One of them is going to have to play first base. Stanton's going to be hurt at some point. They got 3 years left with Stanton. They got to get Judge out of center field. You'd like to get him in right field. That's where Soto plays. And I think I look at Soto, the next 5 years, you could get away with him defensively. But after that, he's not a great defender. So, when he gets into his mid to late 30s, he's probably just going to be a DH. So you got to look at all of those things. And I think if the organization is giving you the money, then why not go for him? He is a generational player.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Maybe I'm naive, but I don't see Steve Cohen losing out on this. But I might be wrong.
No, I mean, I think that's the prevailing thought. To Cashman, it's interesting because every time someone says about the Yankees, oh, the Yankees, they set the price. They're not going to. Is my experience that Cashman, going back to Judge as the latest example, Cashman sort of puts it out there, oh, we're done. We can't possibly. And then the next thing you know, they're signing the guy.
Well, I also think at some point, do you want to be a Yankee or don't you want to be a Yankee? I mean, it's not like he's not going to get paid. I think there's just a lot of things you have to think about. He's got Boris. That's number one. He's going to want an AAV higher than Ohtani. That's because it always comes down to money with Boris. How historical is he? Is Boston and New York important towns for him to play in? What's his relevance in Toronto? I know right now Toronto's not really built to have a farm system to contribute, but that comes and goes. I mean, the Red Sox are stocked right now, but in 5 years they might not be stocked. So, over the term of his contract, all those things are going to come into play. But I don't know Soto at all. I love him as a player. I don't know him as a person, so I don't know what's near and dear to him. And look, when you got $700 million, you can make any place, the best place in the world you want to be. But I do think winning's important, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out in Boston, because it sounds like they're very, very serious, and I just don't know if it's going to be the last dollar for Soto. And Boston's an attractive place in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but you gotta go back to the shock and awe Red Sox. Where they never, JP, I can name 2 times before Dabrowski left that they lost on free agents that they really wanted. Teixeira and Lester. That's it.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right. Well, keep up dominating the podcast world.
When you going to winter meetings?
Oh, listen, we go Sunday. Yes. Well, Sunday, because I gotta coach high school basketball on Wednesday. So
that's a good thing. That's more important.
It's more. Hey, listen,
Are you playing man to man? Tell me you're not playing zone.
I do it all.